All right, Neverwinter Nights enthusiasts, we're jumping in with some armor tactica. And in this vlog, we're going to explore the role of armor in Neverwinter Nights and how possibly, of course, naturally, if you're a martial class, a barbarian, a fighter, a cleric, you're going to have access to armor. But possibly, even if you're playing an arcane class, sorcerer, wizard, possibly consider taking a dip into light armor, either through multi-classing or perhaps even taking a feat. Yes, we have to deal with arcane spell failure, but at the lower level for light armor, it's possible. So let's jump in with understanding this tactica and the role of why it's important to master and understand the various types of armor in the game. Obviously, the first, it's cosmetic. Now, normally I'm a tactica player, right? I love the role-playing aspect, but I love using the different feats and abilities and skills of the classes. I love approaching the different quests in different ways, but it's a visual game and you spend a long time looking at your character. For that reason, the cosmetic aspects of the game, there's a whole modding community on it. Armor is important. Cloaks are important. I'm like Lando. I've got my different types of cloaks that I'm going to wear. Maybe you want to switch things up. So having access to armor brings in those visuals. Now let's look at the armor class equation. Now in regular D&D 3.5, 3.x, which Neverwinter Nights is based off of, that is the primary engine that powers it, the idea of armor class is your first line of defense. And we're going to simplify things a little bit here. You take enough damage, your character dies. And now you have a choice: respawn, take a penalty, deal with it from that perspective, reload. In exploring that, the first aspect of defense is not to get hit in the first place. Having a high enough armor class accomplishes that. Second to that, just to finish out the equation, give you the tactica. If you do take damage, the next aspect should be some sort of damage reduction. Ideally, some sort of damage reduction to lessen the amount of hit points that you take. And then on the hit point side, as that's going down, you have some sort of regeneration, or you're popping healing potions, trying to get that hit point bar back up. But ideally, not getting hit in the first place. Now, this is where things kind of fall apart. And it's not to say armor's not important, but things are compressed a little bit with the D&D Neverwinter Nights engine. As you start out in D&D 3.5, 3.x, tabletop, pen and paper, the idea is that as the challenge ratings, as the monsters increase, they hit you a lot easier. They have literally, like, you have bonuses before you even roll the d20, +2 to hit, +5 to hit, +10, +15, +20. At some level, depending on the encounter, depending on the game, in tabletop, pen and paper, D&D 3.5, 3.x, you can't get that armor class necessarily high enough. So in the lower levels, it's important, because if I move in with heavy armor and I might have some magical protection, +1 ring, +1 cloak, maybe I'm bringing in possibly a shield, I can get some of those lower level monsters. And even, a fighter level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my hit point pool is higher than other classes, but I'm still going to get mobbed. I'm still going to get hit, especially since Neverwinter Nights is a combat-based game. I can have a high enough armor class that every 3 or 4 hits miss before one gets landed. It is important. But as you go through the game in Neverwinter Nights, just like pen and paper tabletop, the challenges increase. Eventually, every hit you're taking is bypassing armor, so that the armor class becomes a lot less important. Now, adding to this, this is the other piece that's unique to Neverwinter Nights. It is a role-playing game. There is a story behind it. And while that story is scripted in that it does not have a dungeon master, in order to make it, and it does a great job of this, make you feel like you're in a living game, a living realm, there are certain encounters, and no spoilers here, no spoilers. There are certain encounters that are broken, meaning based on challenge level, based on where it is, based on party level, whether you have henchmen and summons and pets or not, the hit points of what you're fighting is so much higher, so ridiculously higher, artificially inflated, because it's trying to make the combat last. It's trying to make that chapter end exciting. So if you look behind the scenes, you're like, this guy's got 500 hit points. Like, he's got more hit points than Tiamat. Like, what the heck's going on? Because they don't want you to just go in and hit 3 or 4 times, blast it with some magic missiles, and you're done. They're trying to show a showdown or a checkpoint or something important. So from that perspective, armor class begins to break down, because just on the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, you roll high enough, something's going to hit you. Some of these encounters are fighting back at you. Some are hitting hard, some not so hard. But the fact that the hit points have been artificially inflated to create suspense, to create economy in the role-playing game, you're getting hit. And you're like, I don't understand. I'm jacked up armor class and I'm getting hit. So that begins to pace out. This is where armor class is important. So it's going to prevent you from being hit, but that's going to really, really dissipate really, really fast. I mean, again, no spoilers. I don't want to say when, but this is why armor, so it is important. Absolutely. You want to get your armor class up if possible, but this is where it's really important. Magic items. Magic items. Think of your magic items as slots, different ways that you can utilize the powers of magic items. And there's 2 types of magic items in the game. And I'm treading that line. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, although we are going to talk about one magic item, magic items that offer spell resistance. You get that early on in the game. There's possibilities for it. I feel like I need to mention just one, so we have that to frame and illustrate the tactica here. Magic items are generic. They offer you +1 protection, +1 natural armor. And then there's magic items that are specialized, like give you an ability, like a clicky. Cast this spell 3 times a day. Certain classes are limited to what they can use and can't use. Armor opens up a very, very important slot. Besides the fact that there are suits of armor that offer you clickies and other abilities that are nice beyond the armor class, it opens up a slot for your character to use. Here's an example. A belt of spell resistance. You can buy it. You can find it. It's a random item drop, and it's available in the Chapter 1 quests, at least in one place, I think in 2 places. So I don't feel like I'm giving away that much of a spoiler. This belt of spell resistance, you want to have some spell resistance. That's nice. Whether you're an arcane caster or not, that's nice. You put that in the belt slot, you can't utilize that in any other belt slot. Now, if you also found a ring or you found a cloak or other aspects, you could, but this swapping and mixing and matching. If you have the ability to open up armor, if I have the ability to open up armor, either as a fighter class or possibly as an arcane class, but again, looking at, I understand spell failure. I remember that from D&D 3.x, absolutely. You could get around that with certain feats of meta magic. I usually don't play those feats. I'd rather take the other ones that maximize my numbers and time. But a low enough spell resistance, I can get away with it for certain magic items. It is fun to play. But in this example, if I can have access for spell resistance on a belt and spell resistance on armor, I can pop it in the armor and use the belt slot for different, better, more stuff. Or likewise with the armor. So having armor, because armor is so many different types in the game and some really, really fun, unique armors. And, you want to look cool wearing it. It opens up that slot. Tactically, that is where armor is important. Tactically, that is what armor opens up in the game. So yes, armor class absolutely is important, but it's going to gas out really, really quick. You still want to get it high. But at that point, it switches over to clickies, to abilities, to what can the magical properties of the armor do, and it opens up the limited resources of slots that you have available that you can mix and match. So it's another option for your character class.